Let's talk about diffuse mode of thinking and focused mode of thinking. This idea was recently popularized by scientist Barbara Oakley on learning how to learn. And her colleagues' description of focused versus diffused mode of thinking has had a profound effect on the science of learning. It's so important that we're starting off this section with this topic. So, what does it all mean? Barbara Oakley and her colleagues discovered that there are two states that our brains can be in. One is a focused mode. Focus mode is when all your energy is completely focused on a task. Like when you're taking an exam. You're locked in your room and focused on one thing. Nothing else around you really matters. Your brain does just one thing. And it's so focused that, again, 100% of that attention is going to one thing. That's what focus mode is. Your brain power and attention goes to one activity. It's like you have a laser and that laser is pointing to one thing. And the focus mode of thinking actually activates the prefrontal cortex of your brain. That is right here over here, the front part of your brain. Now, the other mode, which is the diffuse mode, is a little bit different. Diffuse mode is, well, the opposite. It's when your brain is just daydreaming, thinking of different things. We let our minds wander. And in this case, many different areas of the brains are activated. Instead of just the prefrontal cortex, it's all regions of the brain are being activated. You can think of this as, instead of a laser, a flashlight that has lights just dispersed in different areas so that you can see more of an area when it's dark outside. Things like going for a walk or even sleeping actually activate the diffuse mode of thinking in our brain. So let me ask you this. Which mode makes you a better learner? Pause the video and try to guess. Ready? All right, this was a trick question. Most of you might have thought that focus mode is obviously the better method for learning. Actually, what Barbara Oakley and her colleagues discovered is that how well you learn depends on going back and forth between focus and diffuse mode. And this jump of going back and forth is what actually creates efficient learning. The idea is to spend dedicated time on focus mode, and then after a bit of time, when you can focus and you're getting a little tired, you go into diffuse mode. You go for a walk, you let your mind wander, you just go out in nature. You see, the way our brains work is that we can't form strong neural connections, which we'll get into, and just become experts overnight. You can't just turn your brain from knowing to not knowing. It takes time. You can't become an expert overnight, right? We need to focus and create those strong connections in our brain, followed by letting our brain rest and make sure that those connections are created properly. This idea is actually covered in Cal Newport's book, Deep Work. When you focus intensely on a single subject for a period of time, you start forming something called the white sheaths on your brain cells. And these are called myelin. Let's take a look. If we look at an image of a neuron, which is what forms our brain, these are cells that are connected to one another, and that's how we get knowledge. You see that they have something called the myelin sheath over here. And these myelin sheaths actually allow for the signals and connections to travel faster and more efficiently through these different neuron cells because, well, we have a lot of neurons in our brain. When we use the diffuse mode of thinking, when we relax and let our mind wander, or even fall asleep, it lets our brain create these myelin sheaths to make those connections more efficient. So this means by going back and forth between focus mode and diffuse mode, allows our brains to grow and build our brain like a muscle. So that studying a little bit every day is actually better than trying to cram everything all at once. And that's what Barbara Oakley discovered. By going back and forth between the above, we let these ideas that we form in the focus mode bounce back and forth between different topics in our brain. You start associating topics to other things in your life. For example, let's say you're learning to surf and then realize that once you take a break from your first surf lesson, back in the day you skateboarded, and those neural connections needed to form and realize some of the same principles that you had in skateboarding are the same as surfing, allow those connections to form when you're taking a break during diffuse mode. So that when you go for your second surf lesson, you'll actually be better prepared. Now, the key thing is that you can only be in one mode at a time. So we want to avoid multitasking. And focus mode and multitasking are different things. A lot of people think focus mode means having 50 windows open on your computer and being busy. But multitasking is usually a bad strategy because you can rarely do two things at once, especially well. There's actually a famous study by David Rock at the University of California at San Diego that showed when people do two cognitive tasks, that is, tasks that require brain power at once, their cognitive capacity can drop from that of a Harvard MBA to that of an 8-year-old. And it's a phenomenon called dual task interference. Essentially, it's a fancy way of saying doing two things at once is a surefire way to do nothing well. And remember how I said efficiency trumps grit as one of our pillars? When you need to start making an effort to learn, it's not about just being in focus mode for hours on end, working hard all the time. It's about taking breaks and letting your mind wander every once in a while, going for nature walks, making sure you sleep. Taking breaks is actually a sign of high performance, not weakness. And this is actually the smart strategy. You want to be super focused, then super diffused. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.